James Campbell, who's the national political editor of the Herald. The Herald Sun. He joins me from Melbourne, his hometown. James, thanks for joining us. I want to get your thoughts first on the focus on defence, security, fuel security, a possible Australian involvement in the Persian Gulf. There's been a lot said around this, of course, primarily because we've had Mike Pompeo and the Defence Secretary here in town.
Well, it's interesting. You should start with that, because I was surprised yesterday that the Australian government didn't have an answer to the US request to take part in Operation Sentinel. Clearly, this has been under discussion for some time, but we still don't know exactly what the United States has asked of us. And when they were asked about it yesterday, the Australian ministers basically said it's under consideration, but no decision has been taken. Now, my understanding is they haven't yet, the Australian government hasn't yet flagged what our involvement in this, if it's going to happen, might be discussed with the opposition. We're in the dark about it. It's odd. Yesterday would have been a perfect time for the government to announce it if they were going to, but essentially the Americans came and went and no answer has been forthcoming. It's odd because it's a pretty obvious thing in the Australian national interest to keep a sea lane open. I mean,
yeah, and it's obvious. We've had naval vessels in that region imposing sanctions and patrolling for pirates since about 1991. So it would be odd if we were not involved, and it seems this whole fuel security debate has been ramped up to play into that argument about keeping the sea lanes open. So I think you're right. Surely we're going to be involved. The only question would be exactly what our role would be, to what extent we're involved.
Now, maybe that in the next 24 hours we're going to get the whistles and bells announcement. But I just thought it was just curious, I guess, that because it had been flagged several days before, it had obviously been in the pipeline for longer than before it hit the press, that it would have been a perfect time to announce it with the Secretary of States for Defence and State in Australia, but who knows?
And Scott Morrison was at a defence facility in Queensland today, so it would play into that narrative.
Exactly. We didn't like to see him there. That place he was at this morning was a little bit...
The Victorians are a bit upset about that?
Well, we're still not over the Land 400 deal. I mean, Victoria had the workforce and the history producing this stuff, and the government chose to essentially create a greenfields factory up in Queensland.
But James, he's got to thank the Queenslanders. They elected him.
Well, yeah, he does. And there's stage 3's now up for it. I mean, it was very funny when they initially got the contract, because the first few of these Land 400 vehicles were actually built in Germany.
All right, Kel, give me your look. It's almost a superfluous question in a way, because we all feel so helpless and annoyed at the lack of response in the US. But what's your attitude? What's your sense of what will unfold, whether anything will change in the US in the wake of these latest shootings?
Two quick thoughts on that. One is there's a sense in which it's too late. Now, I've read it a number of times that there are as many guns in America as there are people.
Yep.
If we had 25 million guns in Australia, you wouldn't be able to bring in gun control. So in that sense, it's too late. The horse is bolted. It's too late to shut the barn door. There are so many guns in America, you can't change that.
Well, this is the point, right? If say I'm a householder, say I'm a responsible householder in the US now, and I have a weapon that's kept at home, presumably for self-defence. Given what's going on, the last thing I want to do now is give up that weapon.
And that's the second point. The second point is culture. I know a young bloke, grew up in Australia, regional Australian family, good values, nice kid, good values, moved to live in Texas. He went there for his work, and he's now married a Texan girl, so he's settled there permanently. He has gone native. He now tells us he sleeps with a gun under his pillow. Every time he goes out of the house, he carries 2 guns. And he's really aggressive about the NRA kind of line. So there's a culture, there is a way of thinking which is distinctly American. The contrast is Switzerland. In Switzerland, every adult male in a certain age range has got his military weapon at home. So these are military-grade weapons kept in people's houses. They don't shoot 28 people in Switzerland. It doesn't happen. Different culture. So you've got too many guns in America. That's not about to change. The culture is much harder, and I can't see how that's going to change. It's really difficult to see any way ahead for the Americans.
Yeah, it's tragic. James, it used to be a dream of mine to go and live and work in the US for a couple of years, but I frankly wouldn't even consider it. I'd be very worried now with young children, putting them into school and the propensity, the number of assaults we've seen.
I was talking to a friend of mine, an American friend of mine, last year. We went to uni together in England, and we're talking about, is she going to go back there? And she said, look, all my friends, their kids are doing drills when the mass shooter comes. You know, I mean, Sandy Hook and all that. I mean, and it's not a theoretical or academic thing. It's not like duck and cover when we're going to get nuclear attack. You know, some kid could go crazy in there with a gun. You really think hard about it.
Primary school kids are taught that routinely in the US now. They're drilled in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's past the tipping point, so how do you fix it?
Terrible business.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing I have to remember is that, you know, it's kind of like, is it the issue the guns or is it the issue that they're Americans? I mean, as you say, the Swiss are armed, the Israelis are armed, but they don't, you know, they're not clipping each other at the rate the Americans are. It's obviously a mixture of the two.